Tight end Aaron Hernandez taken away in handcuffs today and dropped off the Patriots roster. It's really brought into focus kind of this question of the accountability that NFL teams have for players they draft. And specifically with Hernandez, this is a player came into the league with baggage as a character concern. These are all buzzwords that NFL teams and scouts use to describe a player who's had a certain number of off-field transgressions. In Hernandez's case, it was specifically multiple failed drug tests while he was in college at Florida. Now we're starting to hear other reports about questionable citizenship, potential gang affiliations, other things that teams had talked about and wondered about when Hernandez was entering the league. And when he entered the league, no one doubted why he went in the 4th round. This was a player they had some concerns about. Was he going to have the maturity? Was he going to have the ability to stay out of trouble? Was money going to accelerate what had been some behavior problems? Here's one thing teams weren't worried about, though. Would he ever be implicated in a homicide investigation? And this is something we need to be careful and keep in mind because there's a certain amount that teams like the Seattle Seahawks are going to be drawn into this discussion. Why? Because the Seahawks have taken some players with character concerns, with baggage. They draft Michael Bowie in the 7th round. He was asked to leave the Oklahoma State team a year ago. Sean McGrath, undrafted free agent they got out of Henderson State in Arkansas, he was kicked out of Eastern Illinois earlier in his college career. Not to mention Thorold, Simon, and Spencer Ware, 2 LSU players they drafted who had faced suspensions for substance abuse, for failing drug tests. Those sort of missteps aren't necessarily predictors or indicators of future transgressions, though. These are kids who make mistakes, like all college kids make. Some college kids get caught making those mistakes. But because someone has slipped up, because they've made one of those decisions, does it mean that it's an indicator of something potentially more criminal down the road? I don't think so, and I think that's one of the wrong lessons that people are drawing from this, that in somehow Aaron Hernandez is an indictment of the Patriot way. No, Aaron Hernandez arrest is an indictment of his behavior, and his behavior is not something that the team's accountable for. Now, what the team does have to bear in mind, and what they do have to bear responsibility for, is that they've picked a player who is not going to be available. And in fact, they picked a player who they've decided to release, the Patriots, despite the fact they owe him $7.5 million. They're going to pay that to him. He's going to count that against their salary cost, even though he won't play it down for him. What responsibility do the Seahawks have? Well, when you take players who have demonstrated off-field transgressions, you can't be surprised when Bruce Irvin gets suspended for 4 games for violating the performance-enhancing drug policy. Doesn't mean it's a shock. He was arrested before he was drafted. That happened. Can't come out of the blue and say, oh, we had no idea. But because someone has made a past slip up, does it make it more indicative of that he's a potential bad apple down the road? Not necessarily. It's about risk tolerance, and it's just not as clear cut as people like to make it seem, that you pick a guy with off-field issues and he's a time bomb waiting to go off. You try to provide the support structure that's there. You try to provide the parameters for what is and isn't acceptable behavior. But ultimately, these are adults who bear responsibility for their own decisions. It's not the team's responsibility to make sure they act right.